Welcome to the Shabby Detective, yet another Columbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike White, and joining me, of course, is Mr. Chris Tashew.
And I get to do this again, so go ahead and roast me, but this will be the third time I make this joke. My appearance on this show was spared no expense. They pulled out all the stops to have me on this episode. No expenses were spared, if you know what I mean. Richard Kiley.
Oh, okay.
That's my third time making a Richard Kiley Jurassic Park joke, because I believe I've made it on Night Gallery twice, because he was on 2 episodes of Night Gallery, right? He was the Nazi at one point and then something else. But I remember Father Malone rolled his eyes at me the last time I did it, so I'll just do it again. Why not? Fuck it. Who cares?
Man, you know that movie a lot better than I do.
There are some lines from that movie that occupy rent in my head rent free. So yes.
That's pretty much it.
We got Dodson here.
Yeah, it's pretty much any Nedry lines for me.
Fair.
On this episode of The Shabby Detective, we're not talking about Jurassic Park. We're talking about A Friend Indeed. It is the 8th episode of the 3rd season, directed by Peter Falk's good friend Ben Gazzara, and written by Peter S. Fischer. This episode dropped originally May 5th, 1974. It was 1974. This episode aired May 5th,
Back
1974.
when things aired over the air.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you had one chance to see it, unless maybe you were Elvis Presley and had your own home pneumatic machine where you could record things and watch them on the Lisa Marie or whatever the plane was. So yeah.
Still fucking crazy to think about. We could just flip on Peacock and watch episodes of Columbo like it's nobody's business. Like, it really is a time of wonder and miracles, folks, that we live in. Like,
I got to figure out how to turn on subtitles on there because I don't know how to do it. This episode stars the one and only, as you said, Richard Kiley, and Michael McGuire also. And what an unusual episode, because by the time this starts, somebody's already dead. It is Michael McGuire's wife. He is Hugh Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell's dead, and he calls up his old buddy. Oh, he's not here. Sorry, says his wife, Margaret. But our friend Mark Halpernan is over at the club. So Hugh gives him a call over there, ends up showing up, kind of rude to the waiter. I think the maitre d', just kind of walks off while he's talking. But yeah, hey man, I need you to help me out. My wife is dead. So he immediately, Mark Halpernan is some sort of devious motherfucker, because this guy comes up with a plan to take care of his buddy Hugh and also take care of his problem, which is his wife, Margaret, because she holds the purse strings in his family. Apparently he likes to lose quite a bit when he's out at the club playing high stakes backgammon. Holy cow, you're going to need a pair of doubles to get me out of that one. Look at those 2 5s. Wow.
I know, so over the top.
So, Chris, what did you think of A Friend Indeed?
It is unlike any Columbo episode we've seen up until this point. In so many ways. I mean, look, Val Avery is here. He's integral to the story, and you almost forget that he's there for a good portion of it. He's been in this is his 3rd appearance in Columbo. There's a lot of stuff going on. I think it's a fun episode. I actually have very few problems with it. I actually think it makes use of its time rather well too. I mean, it's an hour and a half, so it's an hour 38, so it's a feature length. And for it being feature length, I didn't find it to drag a whole lot. There's one part that kind of drags. And again, I'm just wondering, like, who the fuck wanted to do this if it wasn't just Peter Falk and Ben Gazzara, which I kind of think it was, given what we know about them and given what we've seen with Peter Falk just wanting to do Peter Falk things sometimes in this show. But all that aside, I mean, what a wild episode. At one point, Richard Kiley just jumps out of a helicopter right above a swimming pool. Like, that's a thing that happens in this episode. That's just, I don't know. It's interesting. And you mention it, we kind of haven't given away the other part of the episode that's just as insane. This is the first time that Columbo knows the person who's the murderer. Like, straight up knows him.
Yeah, because that is a really good twist. Not only does he know this guy, but this guy is essentially his boss.
It's the commissioner of the police. Like, That for me is the real success of the episode. Is it's not that I didn't see it coming because I read the description of the episode, so I knew, but it's still done so well that I forgot that was part of it, because there is so much else going on. There are enough moving pieces within it. Yeah, Peacock, unfortunately, like the episode synopsises or descriptions are pretty bold for the most part and say exactly what's going on, but I can imagine not knowing that twist and it happening, because for me, when that twist happens and it turns out like he's literally Columbo's boss, like, oh, like that raises the stakes. I don't think they go as far as they could have. I think they kind of introduce it and then don't do as much as I would have with it, but I like that that's an interesting angle that this episode takes, because it makes it feel very different. And a lot of the episode's very different. I'm sure we'll kind of get into it, but it's a very different episode of Columbo in a very good way.
I really like this one. I love that it is a policeman that he's investigating. I love just how wily he is, and that, this criminal is really, I don't know when he comes up with all of the moves that he's about to make, but it feels like he's had this in his back pocket for however long. Like, okay, if somebody comes to me and says they want me to cover up a murder, I'm going to have them do me a solid in return and cover for me killing my wife. I kept comparing this in my mind to Strangers on a Train. It's a little different than Strangers on a Train in that there's no agreement between Guy and Bruno that that we're going to kill each other's problems that we have. But this whole thing of, I now have information over you. You're going to have to do me a solid now, quid pro quo. And now you're going to have to help me cover up the murder of my wife, since I helped you cover up the murder of your wife. And just all those things where he's like, oh, I saw someone across the way. And then he gives the press conference and he makes it seem like his wife saw the quote unquote murderer as well. And all the journalists are like, oh, what'd your wife see? What'd your wife see? And then when she dies, he's like, oh, darn. Oh, damn, my slip of the tongue. Margaret never saw anything. The killer must have come back and thought that she saw him. And it's like, wow, you're really laying it on thick here. But I love it. I love this episode.
Yeah, Richard Kiley is a real piece in this movie. Piece being of shit. And that's the thing. I mean, for me, these episodes really are working, firing on all cylinders when the villain is as devious and is like able to navigate his own situation, in this case, his situation, as well as Columbo can chase after them. I like that it's, one mouse running around and a cat's chasing after him, but the mouse has many holes to go through. But at some point, although there will be no more holes to run through and the cat's going to get you. We see that here. I think that the way that they handle it here is very interesting. But to your point, I like that the stakes are raised. I like that Richard Kiley, I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd gotten away with it. He does a good enough job. He slips up a little bit. I mean, the way he slips up is shockingly idiotic. It's shocking how much of an idiot this guy, who's been pretty smart for the most part, has been. I do love that he is able to more or less navigate the entire situation up until the last moment. He has to get gotten by Columbo to be caught. He is caught in the act by Columbo, which I like that. I like that we get all the way to the very last moment and then he gets caught. So yeah. And again, Richard Kiley's he's up there now with some of the best baddies on this show.
Well, it makes me wonder, is he the guy that Gene Barry's Dr. Ray Fleming was reaching out to when he's like, get this guy off of my case? Because he was friends with the commissioner. I don't know if it's the same commissioner or not, but I would love to think that the commissioner is the same guy, that Richard Kiley's the guy who said, okay, yeah, no problem, I'll take care of Columbo, and then turns around and goes, Columbo, something's up with this guy. You really need to press this investigation. I would love if he has to know how smart Columbo is, because to your point, everything that he's doing, all of the slip ups are stupid little things, or things that other criminals could probably get away with. This whole thing of, oh, she keeps her nightgown under the pillow, but he took a nightgown out of the closet and put that on her. So that doesn't make any sense for the way that this was. If it was the husband, he would have known that. So it had to be somebody else besides the husband. And it's just like all these signs pointing at Richard Kiley's character. It's like, okay. And yeah, everything that he does, it's like, oh no, it shouldn't have been that. It should have been this, oh, the knobs were wiped clean. So she would have left fingerprints. The only fingerprints were on this phone and not this other phone, all of these little things. And then when it comes to, God, I love Columbo when he finds that the victim, the Margaret has drowned, and the way he walks into that bathroom and just walks right in and goes right into the tub. One of the best shots for me. I love it.
I really like the bathtub payoff. That it's ultimately, I think this is the bathtub that gets Richard Kiley, more or less, right? Like, at least my perception of the end of the episode is it's as much the bathtub as it is anything else, because what happens when you drown someone? They inhale water. What happens to the water? Stays in the lungs. What does water in a bathtub have? Soap. What does water in a pool not have? Soap. So, and what's funny is the episode kind of leads you down the path of like, well, there's not going to be anything there. That's what you think, because they say like the chlorine more or less disappears, but no, like the soap is there. So that's the indicator. I mean, what's funny is we say that Richard Kiley's smart, but I would wonder, because you kind of brought it up, and maybe, I don't know, we can kind of have this discussion, but is he smart, or is he the biggest fucking idiot that we've met? Because he literally knows what Columbo's deal is. Like you said, I would actually be curious, listeners, because I know you're listening. Please let us know how many times, those of you who watch the show all the time, which I know that there are plenty of you as well, up until this point, up to the end of season 3, how many times has the commissioner been mentioned? Because now we know who that is. At least one of them, possibly. Are there more than one commissioner? He's the deputy commissioner.
Right. Well, and there's also, it's been quite a few years since Columbo put that crafty psychiatrist behind bars. So
we also don't know like the chronological time of Columbo. Like, is this all taking place in like, oh, he just busts these guys every other day? Like, how much time is in between it? But that's what I wonder. Like, or is he just a massive moron who knows Columbo's going to come investigate and knows that Columbo is this like powerhouse of a detective, and he does this anyways? Like, you've done the thing that you're putting people in jail for. Okay. And now you're going to jail because you went toe to toe with Columbo.
Well, I love the other parts of this, because this whole episode is just setting stuff up and knocking it down, setting it up and knocking it down. This whole thing of Kiley pretends that he's a thief that has been hitting all of these these upper echelon mansions. He's going around, and so he just goes through his friend's wife's jewelry box and takes all this jewelry, leaves the ring on her finger. That was a stupid thing. But then when the one guy's just like, oh yeah, no, it's a big old hunk of glass. And then you realize, oh shit, all of her jewelry is completely useless. It's a fake. If he really was the thief, he wouldn't have stole any of that stuff. He would have realized that it was all glass and it was all just complete garbage. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. And the way, you mentioned Val Avery and how, yeah, you kind of forget that he's there, but I think they did a good job of like showing Kiley on TV, and then you cut to the bar and there's Val Avery, and he's making a kind of a scene with his girlfriend, his squeeze, whatever she is. She wishes she was my wife.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, I really wish I was married to you. The guy who spends more time in the jug than out of it.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the bar every time we see him for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, the only time we don't see him is when he's at his apartment. Oh, wait, that's not his apartment. Talk about one of the best twists. I love this twist. This twist is up there with suitable for framing for me, when it's like, no, sir, this is my apartment. I signed the lease this morning. Oh,
that's the moment where the shit hits the fan. And it's like 2 minutes before the end of the episode. It's great. Like the way Columbo catches Richard Kiley in this episode is pretty good. And the fake outs are a lot. There are a fair amount of them in this episode, like we mentioned with the chlorine, like we mentioned with the diamond ring, or the glass ring, the cubic zirconium, even maybe. Like, those things are fake outs, but they're executed all the way to the end. Like they go all the way with them. They don't pull any punches. It's not like, oh, well, we'll mention this thing and then not mention it again. Not only they mention it, then we have the scene of Columbo going and investigating it.
Yes.
And I don't need that every time, but I appreciate it when they do it, and they did it really well here.
Yeah, the whole thing with him going to the used car salesman, I like that. And
right.
Pretty much he's just
God, there is a lot going on in this episode. Jesus.
I mean, yeah, you're right. 94 minutes. And for me, I'm curious what your take is on this. For me, nothing's wasted. But what was the scene that was getting to you?
It's after he goes and meets Richard Kiley's wife. And then it's just like him aimlessly wandering around in his car for a while. And we like watch him in the neighborhood and then he like stops in his car. It's the gag of getting his car to break down again. It's like, I don't know. Why is this? What? I thought it was so he could like see if he could see, or if he could go in the house fast enough. And that did actually be the case, that the wife of Richard Kiley wouldn't see, but it wasn't that. It ended up being just a gag to get his car to break down again, which worked really well at the opening of the episode. That for me is one of these like iconic now for me Columbo moments of him. I couldn't figure out what the fuck he was doing even when the door was open. It's like, oh, I lost my cigar. And then he's like, and this is the commissioner's car. It's like, wow. It answered the question I was wondering the moment he says like, this is the commissioner's car. I was like, oh, he does know Columbo. Okay. Because that's the question you have immediately when it's a cop, is like, does Columbo know them? Is Columbo aware that they exist? And like, yes. And I think for me, that's the other really smart choice of the episode, is making it someone that at least knows who Columbo is by first name, at least.
We don't have the opportunity to read the scripts for every Columbo like we did for Kolchak. We read pretty much everything, but with Columbo, it's like, yeah, once you get to like season 8, you get a couple. Season 10, you get 3 episodes. Season 3, there's one script that I have available to me, and that is the A Friend Indeed script. So it was great to be able to compare this, but I have to say, they followed Peter Fischer's script so exactly. They did a really good job. The only thing that I noticed that was different was there was a line about somebody get Columbo, and they said, oh, we had to send a car for him. So there's more about the car stuff in there. And then the car pulls up and then he gets out and does that. I think it worked better with the way that they shot it, where we just are introduced to Columbo, 16 minutes in before the second murder even takes place. I mean, we've been talking a lot. I mean, the entire time we've done Shabby Detective, when does Columbo come in? What does he know at that time? We've seen him come in before a murder has taken place, like Any Old Port in the Storm. He is there, and the woman comes in who's the girlfriend of the brother. And so he is tipped off to this stuff before he ever gets the call to go out to the vineyard and find out this stuff. So yeah, we've had him introduced before, like there's a dead body, though I think the body was probably dead by that time. But yeah, this was the first time where we have him coming out here. First time we have a body already on the scene. First time he's going against one of his own, a fellow police officer. Yeah, I really like how they are playing with the form in this. And this really gives me hope as far as, okay, you can do a lot of different things with Columbo, because a few times this season, it's like, okay, then this is going to happen. Then this is going to happen. Then this is going to happen. It's always fun watching how Falk plays it, but this really played with the form for me.
And that's why I also really enjoyed the episode, because there's some interesting things going on that are atypical of the show we've seen up until this point. I'll also mention, to me, Michael Maguire is kind of sympathetic as a character.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, Richard Kiley's Halpernon is not. I mean, this guy is like, it seems like he's looking, I mean, like you mentioned, he's looking for a reason to kill his wife, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think he's just looking for a reason to kill somebody. Because to be fair, like, awfully comfortable around dead bodies, too. Like, the question I have is, how did this guy become commissioner of the police? Like, holy shit. Like, the moral compass on this guy, to say it's pointing in the wrong direction is to undersell it. It's pointing in the wrong direction, and he's following it with glee. Because like you mentioned already, the speed and efficiency with which he is able to create the idea of, we're going to frame this guy, and you're going to be fine. And then not only that, but I'm going to quid pro quo it, and you're going to help me when I kill my wife. Yeah, like he's probably the worst character we've gotten on this show so far. Because on top of everything else, he doesn't even kill anybody until the second act of the episode. But all the terrible stuff that he's doing, like it justifies and explains why he's going to kill his wife.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
he's just a bastard, like through and through.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least with Michael McGuire, his character kills out of passion. You know, he's having
Accident?
an argument. Yeah. Squeezes her neck too hard. I mean, yeah, he's a murderer. I'm not trying to say like it's excusable, but it is very much crime of passion. Whereas what Kiley is doing is so premeditated. You know, like that is the definition of premeditation. It is wild.
It's like comparing Jeffrey Dahmer and like a jilted lover, right? Like one of these people is just sitting there, just like enjoying it. And the other person probably would never kill somebody else if they were given an opportunity again. Like it's crimes of passion exist in that moment of uncontrollable emotion, right? And we don't really see it in the episode. So again, we just have to take the Michael McGuire character at his word. But I like the idea of a sympathetic villain in this show because that's the reality. Like these kind of things do happen. Like people die every day and sometimes they die in crimes of passion. There are even laws and rules against it in terms of crimes of passion, how they're prosecuted, how they're defended, how the people go to jail for it. So it's an understood thing in the criminal justice system. I like that this episode is like, okay, it's not him that's the problem so much. Like in a lot of ways, I wonder if Richard Kiley had said like the best thing for you to do is just go admit it and move on. I think this guy would have. I think Michael McGuire would have. But again, like you mentioned, like Richard Kiley's just Mr. Burnsing waiting for somebody that he knows to kill somebody, like tenting his fingers and waiting. That's what it feels like. And I mean, that is the case, but that's why he's such a good villain. I think the villains in this show that I really resonated with are the ones that are just like bastards through and through because they're having the best time. Like, yes, Johnny Cash is great. He's pretty sympathetic, but Robert Culp, Richard Kiley, like, geez, these dudes are just, and I mean, in a lot of ways, maybe not playing it at the same level, but like a Donald Pleasance as well is like enjoying the fact that he did this because he's gaining something from it. This is really a great entry into the show.
You mentioned Val Avery, and I do like that this is a substantial role. He's not just renting a boat to Suzanne Plachette, you know, but the other person who's in here is our good friend Arlene Martell. She's back again, and this time she's actually on screen because the last time she was supposed to be around was, I think, the Double Exposure episode, the subliminal message one, where she plays Tanya Baker, and she's only talked about and never actually seen. But here we get to see her one more time, and that's when Columbo, I can't even remember why he's going in to talk about the jewelry stuff. And while he's at the jeweler's, I need a new band for this watch.
Right.
It's a really good watch. You know, I've had this for a few years. You know, oh yeah, that'll be $25. No, I don't need the watch. I just need the band.
I love Columbo so much as just a character. Like he really is like one of the like seminal pop culture detectives as far as I'm concerned. Like it's pretty much just Peter Falk, which I think anybody who watches this show and loves it like you do, and I'm coming to, and I obviously have a lot and enjoyed what we've watched. Like it's so much just him that like that. And not that they don't make him like this anymore, but like people aren't doing this thing anymore the way that Peter Falk was, where it's like, I'm going to work on this show and I'm not even sure I like it, but I'm going to give it everything that I have. Like we know and have heard of through plenty of news, you know, entertainment news things, how many shows die because nobody's committed to it. And we know that Peter Falk in a lot of ways his commitment to the show varied, but I don't think he ever phones it in. Even when I think he might be wanting to, like he's just so goddamn good in this show. And I know we say it like every episode and it shouldn't come as a surprise anymore, but every time I watch a new episode with him, I'm like, and he just gives you something else, some other little thing different. Yeah, he's great. Excuse me, ma'am. I didn't mean to scare you. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Can't take this guy anywhere. No. And I'm wondering, and I have a question for you. Are those pictures at the end just pictures that he found somewhere and he's passing off as his niece and nephew? Because, like, again, like, so is Columbo just renting the apartment just to rent it? Or is he kicked? Or does he just live in his car and he has no family? Like,
just making it all up. Yeah.
I kind of feel like he has been this whole time. And this episode, where he is, kind of screams to me like divorced dad energy. Like he's like, like
he moved in his underwear, he moved in his t-shirts, he moved in everything. Yeah, those fake pictures. Yeah. Like Rachel from Blade Runner.
Yeah, he's just like, this is my backstory. Yeah, because you created it that way. I always wonder, like, is Columbo for real? I never know. But the point is, you don't know, which is how he's able to navigate around these criminals so deftly. Is they have no idea what to make of him, except for Richard Kiley, who should have known better. Like, of all the people, man. So I'm saying, like, this guy's a big dummy. He's smart, but he is ultimately like the biggest dummy we've seen.
Oh yeah, he should have been like, well, I need Ricky Brockman to come in here, and he can do this whole murder investigation. Keep Columbo the fuck away from me.
Like, I'm going to go kill my wife in like San Luis Obispo or something, or like in the middle of Bakersfield, just so I don't have to have Columbo come out and deal with it. It'll be the local cops, not the LAPD.
Yeah, the old James Ellroy special. Yeah, I get the sheriff's department.
Exactly. Yeah, don't get the cops, get the sheriff's department. But that's the thing, like we've said, like with Columbo being just the powerhouse of a character that he is, it's hard for me to believe that the police commissioner wouldn't know what his deal is. But yeah, I love how dastardly he is, and I love how much Peter Falk in this episode specifically. I don't feel like I know immediately when he shows up that he knows. I think it takes him quite some time in this episode to get to the point where he has put it together more or less.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the first clue is that he might see. I mean, it could be the nightgown under the pillow.
I think the door handle is the first thing. I think he's like, why are these handles? Like, didn't you like dust these handles? And they were like, nothing.
It's little things that just keep adding up and adding up. And I love too the whole thing where he's like, I can't fill in this report. Yeah, I'm still working on it. There's a few things, because he's always doing that and saying that it's the captain who's on his ass, and it's like, oh, I got to just a few more questions, I got to fill in all these things for his report. This time it's like, sorry, Commissioner, I can't get you this report. I'm still working. It's still a few things just not adding up for me. I love it.
Yeah, no, Columbo's great in this episode. I mean, I think Richard Kiley's great too. And I also really like, again, I like the idea of having a third party, the Val Avery character, who has his own autonomy and machinations here, because he's just as our friends in Barney Miller know, he's just a thief. He ain't no murderer, which they see plenty of in Barney Miller. Like, most of the time, the people that are being booked in the 12th are just common criminals or people who have problems with grammar. And here it feels that same way, where it's like, okay, like, normally Columbo is brought into these things, and he's brought into it so there's a person you can point at and be like, this is the person. Here, I don't think he knows it's Richard Kiley for quite some time, like at least halfway through the episode.
I could see that. I tend to give Columbo the benefit of the doubt and think that he knows immediately, but I can see your point. I could see him not actually being able to add it all up until, it's still pretty early in the affair, but yeah, until that beginning of the second act.
Well, and again, it's some of that, like, just too close to be able to tell, right? Because he's in the police. Like, this guy's the police commissioner.
Once it comes to the second murder and there's that whole, like, oh, you saw him out of the, from the helicopter and you knew that? Oh, okay.
Right. Hiding behind the car. It's a very interesting episode because, again, having a Val Avery character that has his own autonomy. There hasn't been a character like that yet who's like, I didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't kill a single person, and they're trying to pin this on me? Like, no fucking way. Again, going to prison for murder is very different than being a common burglar. So I like that there's like an added stake, an added complexity to all of this.
We've talked so many times before about Columbo when he knows somebody's innocent, like talking to the aunt in the Suitable for Framing episode, Kim Hunter, and he's just like, yeah, no, she didn't do it. And of course, that drives Ross Martin fucking crazy. What are you talking about? No, of course she did. With this one, it's like he talks to the guy from the used car lot who wants to give him $80 for his car, which made me laugh quite a bit. Yeah, no, that's okay. I don't need to come in and see this other girl that you hooked up with when the wife of the guy was busy. That's fine. I know you're all set. Same thing with Val Avery. He's just like, no, I don't think you're a murderer. He just flat out, no, I know you didn't do this. And then he's able to win the trust over because he has to have Val Avery go along with him on this stuff. He has to be part of this dupe to get the commissioner up to the apartment and all this stuff. And I just love that. I love how Columbo has one file made up and just puts that fake address in there. And he's like, the only two people that ever saw it were me and you. And you came over here and you planted this evidence. This is my apartment. I love that.
So my question is, when Columbo gives the information and lets Halpern see it, he knows, or is that the final piece of confirmation that he needs?
I mean, I think he knows, but yeah, that's the way that he's going to get him.
The Michael Maguire character, I feel like he could be swayed into admitting what he did. Richard Kiley has to be caught. Like that's how malignant of a shithead he is. He's like Ross Martin. He has to be caught in the act. And it's like, that's the only way this is going to happen, because this guy is going. It's like in Strangers on a Train, where Bruno refuses to say anything up until, I don't know what you're talking about. And then his body involuntarily lets us know, oh, by the way, he was in on it, and nothing this guy was saying was a lie. It was all the truth. I like that similarly here, like Richard Kiley, up until the moment where it's like, there's nothing else to prove here. You can't do anything about this. You have made it so, and that is what it is. I love that. I do like that kind of formula of this show that they've done a couple times, which is not letting Columbo have this 20-minute setup thing. Like, this is all just like boom, 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 episode's done. Like, I think of the Miguel Ferrer episode, like 2 episodes ago, like that, the end of the episode takes like 20 minutes because they're like, well, he did it, and we're going to take the son out, and then we're going to give him time to wait, and then we're going to book him. Here it's just like, nope, we got this and this and this, and that's it. We got him. And he's just going to admit it. Again, I don't know why he would admit it. Like, I feel like you're the police officer. Like, the first thing you do is lawyer the fuck up. And that's the thing. Like, this is one of the few cases where I'm like, Columbo's kind of foils in this episode. I think Richard Kiley could still get away with it, realistically. Like, I don't think any jury is going to prosecute him easily. A lot of circumstantial evidence.
I wouldn't be surprised if they got Michael Maguire to turn on him.
To turn state's evidence. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, that's the way I saw this playing out after like the 2 minutes or the 2 months after the episode is Michael Maguire's character is kind of coerced or more or less feels guilty enough to admit it. But yeah, like it's funny because like I'm not saying there's not a lot to pin it on Richard Kiley, but it's kind of just one thing. It's the one thing of he went to the address because again, he has no proof that he murdered his wife. The wife is dead, but it's not like there's handprints or anything else. The only proof that she didn't die in the pool is the bathtub.
Yeah, but there is the evidence that he planted there. So that's a little bit less than circumstantial. But yeah, I know what you're saying. And yeah, I could see them being like, hey, Michael Maguire, we know you killed your wife, but the punishment doesn't have to be going over to like, Sing Sing or any of these types of places. You could go to like the Club Med prison and spend your time there.
Yeah, if you turn stool pigeon.
Yeah, seems like a good deal to me.
Yeah. And that's the thing. What's interesting about these 2 people murderer episodes is they haven't really mined this dynamic the way that this episode did. And I think that this is the most interesting way to do it because similarly to Strangers on the Train, but also very different, like you mentioned, the reasoning and the autonomy of each character is very different in each of the pieces. I prefer it here. I prefer it here only because they don't feel, I'm not saying and I don't think the characters are flat in Strangers on a Train, but Strangers on a Train's tension kind of plateaus at some point, and this just keeps going and going and going. Because we as the audience are in on it in both of these cases. But in Strangers on a Train, I think that there's, in terms of the tension building and the interesting interactions, I think this does it a little bit better. If we're talking about this kind of scenario of 2 people killing 2 ostensibly random people.
Guy is the typical Hitchcock wrong man, and he has to prove that he's not the wrong man or that he is the wrong man, and he has to go out there and like he becomes the investigator. He's getting his fiance involved in it. He's getting his sister, the Patricia Hitchcock character, involved in it, or sister-in-law. Like getting all of these parties involved and trying to prove himself innocent, as opposed to having this godlike investigator who can come in and just be like, no, sorting it all out, which I appreciate that. But I'm curious how you liked Strangers on a Train.
So it's like, I think the second Hitchcock movie I've seen. I got no problem admitting that. He's just one of the few directors I have not made time for. I enjoyed it. I think it was pretty good. I think it was pretty good. And I think it was also interesting to compare and contrast it against this and that. And then what's funny is there's an episode of Tales from the Crypt that is very similar to both of these things. That it's, again, the whole third act of it takes place on a train, and there's some intrigue as to who killed whom and how was the person who died, who killed them and why, and all that. So I enjoyed it. I mean, again, it's definitely within my wheelhouse of the kinds of things that I like, and the performances were fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad that you liked it. And I really like that one. I especially like the Patricia Hitchcock character and how she becomes the stand-in for the Teresa character because she's got the same types of glasses. The use of the glasses I thought was really nice, especially the murder being reflected in them. I mean, it's not as cool as Robert Culp's glasses in Columbo, but it was definitely pretty nice. And yeah, when he sees Patricia Hitchcock and then you get the flame in her glasses, I thought that was really nice too.
I was about to say, like, that whole picture in the glasses thing, they've done that on this show.
Oh yeah. Culp in Death Lends a Hand.
Yeah, and then I think we also saw it on Night Gallery, where they did that with.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I think that it's an interesting stylistic choice. And what's even more impressive is that it's done physically. Like, this is not a digital thing by any stretch of the imagination. So it makes me even more impressed because I'm like, oh, okay, so you actually had to do this and double expose it and all that. Like, yeah, Hitchcock has an eye for the thematic for sure. Like, he knows just how to set and light things. He's the master of suspense for a reason.
Oh yeah. Well, and then you get all those great double entendres and just that weird sexual attraction that Bruno has to Guy, and is Guy giving it back? Is he not? I mean, just, yeah, all of that. And that it was based on Highsmith, and she's got homosexual characters like crazy in her books. And so I'm not sure. I've never read Strangers on a Train, but I would not be surprised if Hitchcock even pumped that up a little bit more, just trying to fuck with the censors.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading about the homoeroticism of it and all of that. And it's there. I don't think it beats you over the head with it, but it's there enough.
Right. Robert Walker, the father of Robert Walker Jr., who we just saw in the Mind Over Mayhem episode.
Oh, nice. Right, yeah. Right.
I can totally see, when I think about their faces, I'm like, oh, I can totally see that, especially around the eyes.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad I watched Strangers on a Train. What's funny is I watched Truly Madly Deeply, and in that movie they talk about strangers on a train. And I recorded an episode of that today, and we're recording this today, and it was like weird synchronicity. For anybody that's interested, the episode of Tales from the Crypt that is it even says it's an homage to Strangers on a Train. It's the 6th episode of the 5th season, so it comes pretty late in the show, and it's 2 for the show. And David Paymer plays the Guy Haynes character, and Vincent Spano plays the Bruno character. And then David Paymer's wife is played by Tracy Lords, of all people. So, but it's very much like a straight, like, homage to that, which is also then, I think this is an homage to that, right? Like, it's not a coincidence that this is the way that it is.
I mean, I was sitting there thinking Strangers on a Train, and Andrea actually was, oh, this is like Strangers on a Train. Like, okay, good. And then, of course, we saw Farley Granger. He was that satanic figure that caused back pain in the Tales from the Dark Side episode. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. He's great. I mean, the setup of Strangers on a Train being so iconic. I mean, look, the idea of you get on a train and this person who's been following you asks you to murder someone that they know. That's a great setup. It's a really good setup for a movie. Like, and it's also a great setup for a short form TV show or a feature-length movie in this film's case, or feature-length episode in this episode's case.
Would be really good is if you get Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito to kill Anne Ramsey. That would be hilarious, and make that Strangers on a Train.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's Throw Mama from the Train.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
I've never seen it. Is it worth watching?
No, it's not. Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it.
No. I mean, Danny DeVito plays he's no Bruno, because Bruno's so debonair.
He's great.
Yeah, and just kind of gets around and all this. Let's say Danny DeVito is developmentally delayed in Throw Mama from the Train. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. No, good times.
Robert Walker's great in the movie. Like the way that he plays Bruno is so specific, and in a way that like I'm impressed that that's the choice that they made, because it's a hell of a choice, and I think it's a really good one. Which is he's not mustache twirling, like he's just there.
That scene of Guy playing tennis and all the heads are moving back and forth, but Bruno's just staring at Guy that whole time.
Yeah.
And all the heads are moving, but his being still makes it even creepier.
Well, and also when he goes to the father's house to tell him and he turns the light on, and there he's just sitting there because he knew he was getting double crossed. He is that guy. Yeah, he's so good. I loved the movie. It was fantastic. And yeah, primarily because of their performances. Like, I haven't seen enough Hitchcock, which is clearly the case. And it's kind of depressing. Robert Walker died like 2 years after Strangers on a Train came out. Like, what a shame. What an actual shame. Because that for me, I think is the thing that I was surprised by, is again, having not seen a lot of Hitchcock movies. Some of these actors I've seen in other things, but like Hitchcock gets the best out of everybody. Like he sounded like a pretty pain in the ass as a director in terms of like Tarantino type, like I'm no phones on set, we're doing the thing. But I can kind of respect that. Like, we're doing the fucking thing, so we're doing the fucking thing, and that's what we're here to do. And look, I mean, the performances he gets out of these actors are widely considered to be their best performances in this movie, in Strangers on a Train. So I think that speaks volumes to the ability of Hitchcock as a director, regardless of the problems he had as a person and the way he handled himself.
No, he was a real piece of shit in real life, but I love his work. I mean, he's kind of like Polanski. Like, I love Polanski's movies. Guy was an asshole, or is an asshole in real life. But yeah, if you don't mind me being your Hitchcock sommelier, allow me to recommend Rope, where you get another really good performance from Farley Granger, but you also get John Dahl, and then Jimmy Stewart is fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you be my Sherpa up the mountain of Hitchcock? Is that
I
what
will.
This is?
I would be more than happy to.
I believe I'm watching Torn Curtain here in the next couple weeks, which is that's a Hitchcock one, right?
It's a Hitchcock one, but it's
Julie Andrews in it.
lesser Hitchcock.
Yeah, Julie Andrews and Paul Newman. I mean, it can't be that bad, right? Cue me a month from now. It was, in fact, that bad. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know much. I mean, I have never spent time looking at Hitchcock's movies. And the only thing I only thing I know about him is he treated the women on his sets pretty poorly. So that's all I know. And other than the fact that his movies are widely considered to be some of the greatest films ever made in terms of the genre he was making them in. But yeah, I have not seen enough. And Rope, I know Rope is definitely on that list, because isn't that the case of the fucking Vanzetti and the other guy, right?
It's not Sacco and Vanzetti. It's more Leopold and Loeb.
Leopold and Loeb. Okay.
Yeah.
Getting my murderers confused.
Sacco and Vanzetti were anarchists, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And Leopold and Loeb were the thrill killers, as seen in the film Compulsion, I believe, with another huge talent. Orson Welles was their lawyer in that movie. And I want to say it was Dean Stockwell, and I can't remember who the other guy was.
I'll watch any and all Hitchcock at this point, because like I said, I haven't seen enough. But yeah, this movie's good and totally justified as something worth watching in relation to this episode. I think if you've seen this episode and you haven't seen Strangers on a Train, it would, as we say, behoove you to do so. I wanted to ask, since we're coming to the end of the episode and this is the end of the third season, what has been the episode of this season that resonated with you the most coming back through this watch through together?
The one that resonates with me the most of all Columbos, Any Old Port in a Storm. I mean, it still stands up for me. It's still just the pinnacle of Columbo for me. You made that great point about the mustache twirling, or like the really like out there villains, the ones that are really doing a great job. And poor Donald Pleasance kind of gets thrust into this position as murderer, but he's also loving it. He can now order all the wine he wants. He's just living on borrowed time, basically. I don't think he thinks he's going to get away with any of this stuff, because at some point, those chickens are going to have to come home to roost, and he's going to have to start paying for all this stuff that his brother was warning him about. But Adrian Corsini was just having a good time, and Donald Pleasance blowing up at those guys in the restaurant is still one of my favorite things. How about you, Chris? What was the best and maybe even the worst moments of season 3 for you?
I think for me, the pinnacle moments for me are Johnny Cash being in the show, which just like, I mean, I know that was just the last episode, so it's a little unfair, but I also think like Johnny Cash makes such an impact on this show that if you ask me, queue up 4 years from now or whatever it is, if you ask me at the end of this show or whenever we finish what episodes will stand out and what characters are going to stand out, I'd be surprised if I still don't say that Johnny Cash character. I know that there are going to be plenty of fantastic villains from here until the end of the show, but Johnny Cash is Johnny Cash, and it's in a lot of ways. I'll quote John Cusack from High Fidelity. He's in fucking Columbo. It's like, who the fucking thunk it of all people, Johnny Cash and Columbo. Obviously the Donald Pleasance episode is fantastic. I really like how good of a villain he is. I mean, I also mentioned, I think for me, I enjoyed Mind Over Mayhem a little bit more than I think you did. So I liked Miguel Ferrer, or I guess not Miguel, Jose. Yeah, the Emperor of the Known Universe. He's great there. I will say this season, maybe the lacking has been the people dying have been kind of unmemorable for the most part. Like we've had some people die on this show that are like, oh, okay, like this is a rather well-known character actor. They give him a lot of time. I think it's indicative of how this season has treated the people that die, in that the first person to die in this episode is already dead, and it's played by an uncredited actress. So I don't know. That for me, I feel like this season has been about some killers that are really lighting it up. But like Mickey Spillane was one of the victims, and they did like nothing with him at all. I mean, the episode that you've talked about already with Donald Pleasance, like his brother doesn't do shit for the most part. He has one antagonistic scene, and that's it. I think for me, maybe the best victim this season. But again, this guy's like the whistling idiot of them all, is Martin Sheen. The first episode we watched, where it's just like, dude, the worst thing you could do is what you did, and you went and did it anyways. So he's the standout victim. But I think, yeah, this has been a very strong season killer-wise, but victim-wise, it's been kind of weak. And I don't think that's necessarily always going to be the case, but this season seems like they definitely weren't phoning it in for the killers.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to talk about season 4 with you. And before we do that, I think we should announce a very special episode. On the next special episode of The Shabby Detective, we're going to take a little bit of a break and jump forward in time. And we're going to be talking about one of the great comedies of the 21st century. Chris, you want to say it?
Oh, it's Corky Romano, baby.
Fuck yeah.
It was the film that introduced me to Aha. And no, I'm not kidding. And you know exactly what I'm talking. Its Take on Me is in that movie in like a pretty substantial way, right?
If memory serves, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I just remember it so fondly. And we got Mr. Falk in there, and I'm super excited to talk about it with you.
Peter Falk playing, I believe, Peter Berg, Chris Penn, and Chris Kattan's dad. He is the father to all three of these people. Which of them is the most unbelievable, we will get to when we get to the episode, but I don't think Chris Kattan is going to be the answer. I don't know in what universe Chris Penn comes out of Peter Falk, but...
Yeah, he's going to need a C-section, definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to rewatch Corky Romano. I think, like yourself, it's been a decade plus. I don't know why. Kind of forgot it existed. But now that we're doing this, it feels like the perfect time to go back to Columbo meets Chris Kattan in Corky Romano for whatever reason.
Well, until we do that, Chris, what are you up to these days?
Working on podcasts and all sorts of interesting stuff over at weirdingwaymedia.com, where the things that I work on can be found. a lot of other fantastic shows like 80s TV Ladies, Feminine Critique, Twisted and Uncorked, your show, The Projection Booth. All great shows that can be found at Weirding Way Media, and I have effectively nothing to do with them, which means they're fantastic on their own, which I'm super proud of. So I just get to be proud of everything that everybody else makes. So
Aw.
Weirding Way Media is where you can go to listen to this show and so many other things. What about you, Mike?
Pretty much the same thing. I'm not on any of those other shows either, except for the Projection Booth. But yeah, we're doing great work over there. People should come on over to weirdingwaymedia.com and check out the shows because some good stuff. Thank you so much to John Walker for our theme song. Thank you to Colin Gallagher for our end theme. And thank you to everybody for listening. Please continue to listen. Go ahead, rate and review the show wherever you get it. That would be greatly appreciated. And until then, we will see you next month with some more Peter Falk goodness.